Hi there and welcome to some more Christmas inspiration with card number 2 for this year. I'm always aware when I put these tutorials on here that you might not have the stash that I have. In fact, it's quite likely you haven't got the stash that I have. So I hope that this design you'll be able to see as we work through it. It's very adaptable. Most people have a snowflake die or a snowflake punch. Most people have pattern papers and most people have ribbon. And it's just a case of finding the combinations that you've got to make this card work. For instance, the stamped sentiment could be a stamped sentiment as it is here, or it could be one you've printed out on your computer. So I'm working on a cream card base. Yours could be a different colour depending on how you're putting this together, and it measures 11 inches by 5.5 inches. I've scored it at 5.5 inches, so I have a 5.5 inch square card base. In fact, I'm about to have two because I'm going to make two cards. One, because I need them for my stash, and two, because I just wanted to show you how different it looks when you can add a different colour to the design. Next, you need two pieces of patterned cardstock. As I said before, I'm using black and cream, and I think that the bottom pattern should be something a little bit more fancy, so I'm using this flock paper, and then I've got a plainer stripe to sit on the top. I think it's better to have one slightly plainer and one a little bit more fancy for this card design. So the two pieces measure 5.5 inches by 2 3/4 inches. So using double-sided tape, you're going to attach these two pieces of patterned paper to the card front. So attaching the less fussy of your papers to the top of your card and the more fussy one at the bottom. And then it's just a case of checking, and if you've got any little bits of card overlapping as I have here, just trim round with your scissors. Now we're going to look at how to measure the ribbon embellishment part of this card. And so you're going to be using a pencil and a ruler on the inside of the card, and you're going to measure out so that the crosses when you thread your ribbon through are evenly spaced across your card. So I've already worked this out. I know that my centre point on my card is 2 3/4, so I'm going to come 1/4 inch to each side of that line. So I'm putting my marks in first so that I get a nice even line, and I've got one at 2.5 inches, one at 2 3/4 inches, and one at 3 inches. So they're exactly in the centre of the card. So that centre line is where the two papers meet on the front of the card. And now I'm going to measure the places where I'm going to punch the holes. So they're put on the top and bottom lines as you look at the card, and starting 1/4 inch in from whichever edge you're measuring from, you're going to mark every 1/2 inch, and you should end up with another 1/4 inch gap at the fold of the card. So 1/4 inch in, and then every 1/2 inch on the bottom line. Now you could extend this to for a DL card or a bigger square card. So just bearing in mind working out the size of your card so that you can do the 1/2 inch increments. And then I'm just taking, in this case, one of the very first tools I ever bought, which is a Making Memories hammer and punch, and I'm just punching a hole in every one, or over every one of the marks I've made on those two lines. And I'm going to fast forward to the holes finished so that you don't have to keep seeing the camera shake. So you could punch your holes whichever tool that you happen to have in your arsenal. It might be one of those spring-loaded punches, or it could be a silent setter or crocodile, and then we're ready to start putting down our ribbon. And I'm using a ribbon that's 1/2 inch wide, and as you can see it sits in between the holes on the card. So before you attach the ribbon to the card, we need to cut a slit right on the fold, so roughly the depth of the lines that you've drawn on the card. So just cut right on the fold, and that will allow us to tuck the ribbon inside the card once it's put across the front. So trim your piece of ribbon just slightly longer than the front of the card, and then you're going to attach double-sided tape to it, but you're going to avoid the little, probably about 1/2 inch on one side of the ribbon, and that's the piece that we're going to tuck in behind the front of the card. So if you put tape on there, you can do it, but it does kind of tend to stick to itself. So just avoid that little section at the end, and then place the ribbon in between the 2 rows of holes that you've punched. And I like to trim it roughly to about 1/2 inch excess. That's if your scissors will let you. And then just tuck that little piece of ribbon to the back of the card, and then using the back of your craft knife, just poke the other free end of the ribbon through to the other side of the card. Add a little bit of double-sided tape, and just tuck that free end of the ribbon to the inside of the card. And then we're ready to begin the crisscross pattern of ribbon across the front of the card. So you need a strip of ribbon roughly about 24 to 26 inches long, and you're going to thread that in a crisscross pattern across the front of the card. So starting by halving the ribbon, you're going to post both ends of the ribbon through the first 2 holes at the fold of the card, and then you're going to pull both ends so that they're even, and then you're ready to begin threading. So both ends of the ribbon, one through each of the holes at the fold edge of the card, and then pull them both so that you're splitting the ribbon in half, and you're ready to begin the crisscross. So take each of the ribbons and thread them diagonally from their original starting point, and that forms your first kiss. And if you try and make sure that the ribbon lies flat as you thread it across the front of the card. Once you've done the first cross, then you're going to come straight to the next hole rather than diagonally. So you get a series of running stitches on the inside of the card and kisses on the front of the card, and you continue in that manner across the front of the card to the free edge of the card. I definitely had trouble with this ribbon being flat on the front of the card, so I had to fiddle with it quite a lot to get it to sit nice and flat. And the final 2 holes of the card that you post the ribbon through are going to bring the ribbon to the front of the card, and then you're going to tie it into a neat little bow and trim off any remaining ribbon that you have. Next, you need to have some kind of snowflake embellishment for the front of your card. I've used this Cuttlebug die and embossing folder to make my snowflake, and I've made it out of cream cardstock. And it is a little bit big on the front of my card, so what I'm going to do is trim off the ends of my snowflake to make it fit. I'm just going to snip those little triangles at the end of my snowflake away, just to make my snowflakes slightly smaller. So if you could be using any dies, you could be using Spellbinders dies, Marianne dies. You might even have snowflakes that you've already purchased pre-cut. So it's just a case of making a nice little layered snowflake element for the front of your card. So I'm going to be using 1 cream snowflake, and then I'm going to punch out of some black glitter cardstock a smaller snowflake to layer on top of it. So you could use another die if you wanted to rather than a punch, but I'm going to be using a Dovecraft snowflake punch and some black glitter card. So sorry about the shake, I'm needing to use a bit of brute force, as you can see, to punch through the glitter card. And that's the 2 elements with, I'm going to be also putting a gem into the middle of this snowflake. That's the 2 snowflake elements. And then I just wanted to talk to you about the greeting. I like to try and give you as many choices as I can, because I'm aware that on these videos you may not have the things that I'm using. So originally I stamped the greeting on the first card that I made, but also you could equally print out some greetings using your computer, and it's quite handy sometimes to have a whole set of greetings at your disposal that you can cut up, perhaps use a die to cut a nice shape. I'm just going to trim mine into an oblong because of the ribbon being fancy. I'm keeping my greeting quite plain, and then I'm going to mount that again on a bit of the glitter cardstock. Now, because it's glitter, you may or may not have already realised that double-sided tape doesn't always work too well if you get little bits of glitter shedding. And for that reason I would always recommend that you use a PVA glue to attach any cardboard elements, or in this case the greeting, to the glitter card. But first of all I'm going to put the snowflake in position, and as you can see I'm using silicone glue, and I like to use that on a delicate element like this because I can get the lift, and once it's solid, once the pin flare has gone off and gone hard, it provides support for the delicate structure of the snowflake. So I'm just using that to attach the snowflake into position and to achieve a little bit of lift on the front of the card. And I want to finish my snowflake with a gem. So I didn't have the right shade of green in the sparkly gems, or the crystal gems, so I'm going to use this little, it almost looks like a brad or an enamel dot, I think they're called. I think the colour, it's not quite the same match as my ribbon, but it's near enough, just to add a little pop of green in the centre of that snowflake embellishment. And then finally for the front of the card I'm just attaching my greeting, which of course, as I mentioned before, could be stamped onto my glitter card, and then I'm just trimming it so that it's completely framed by the glitter, and then I'm using foam pads this time to attach it to the front of the card. The choice of positioning is yours, but I'm going with top left in this instance. And then I just wanted to talk to you a little bit, or give you an idea for the centre of the card, because I've used a little bit of colour on two of these cards. I made another one with a lime green ribbon. I'm going to make a coloured inner for the cards that I've made that have got the coloured ribbon on. So I've trimmed so the inners of the card measure 10.5 by 5.25 inches, and then folded at 5.25 inches to make a 5.25 inch square inner. And that should sit nicely on the inside of your card with just a slight border all the way round. And for those of you that might be a bit new to card making, it's always nice to have a few ideas on how to treat the insides of your cards. The reason I'm putting an inner into this particular design is just so that it hides a little bit of the workings of that ribbon border strip that we've created, and it just tidies it up a little bit on the inside. Sometimes when a card has just plain card inside, you don't need to attach an inner, but you could still decorate the inside of the card ready for your greeting. So I'm just using some more of the striped paper that I used on the front of the card, and I've cut two pieces that measure 1 inch, and I'm just trimming them to fit as I work. So I'm going to put two 1 inch strips on the bottom of the card and a 1/2 inch strip at the top. And I'm just avoiding the actual fold, the centre fold, so just by 1 millimetre, and then I'm laying it right across the top so it marries up to the top edge of the paper. So just remembering when I'm adding the second strip, again just to avoid that central fold, and it just avoids adding bulk, so that your card insert closes quite easily when the card is shut. And just a word, particularly to new card makers, when you attach the insert, if you add a strip of double-sided tape to what would be the top of the card insert, and then I place the inner on the back of the card and centralise it, and then I close the top of the card, and then it's in the right position. And that means that when you open the card, the insert will open automatically because it's attached to the front of the card rather than the back. And it avoids all that, for the person that's reading the card, you know, it'll open nice and easily. So I'm just thinking of how I'm going to attach my greeting to the card. I could stamp it. If you've stamped your greeting on the front of the card, you may well wish to stamp it on the centre of your card, but I'm just going to match what I've done on the front of the card, and I'm going to cut another greeting. So I had Season's Greetings on the outside, and I'm going to take that same greeting and I'm going to mount it onto glitter card and put that in the centre. And then I'm repeating the whole process, this time using a cream paper to create an inner for the card that has the cream ribbon. Again, attaching it. I forgot to rub out my pencil marks. Again, attaching it to the front of the card. And then finally, the lime green cardstock. This time you can see I've offset that cream stripe, just add a little bit of green top and bottom. Got lots of design choices along the way, and there you have 3 Christmas cards ready to be written and ready to go to my stockpile of Christmas cards for this year. I've put a couple of links at the end of this video for more Christmas card inspiration. I hope you're getting on with yours this year. Mine are gradually piling up and these videos are helping. So I hope that I've given you some inspiration. I've definitely stockpiled a few more Christmas cards and I love this ribbon finish. So I hope you find that useful for the Christmas cards and birthday cards alike. Thank you for watching. So if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to click here to subscribe, press like, share with your friends on Facebook, or leave me a comment. I love to hear from you. If you're looking for more challenging projects, then why not visit my Etsy shop and see what I have to tempt you on my virtual shelves. You could also come over and visit me at my blog where there's a whole heap of inspiration waiting for you to explore. And finally, I'm sharing 2 more links for Christmas card inspiration, and I hope to be back with you again soon with another video.